All right, welcome back to ABA Exam Review and the continuation of our RBT Exam series where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our stated materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. A teacher aims to decrease the amount of time a student takes to begin working after being given a worksheet. To evaluate progress, the teacher needs to measure the time from when the worksheet is handed to the student to when the student writes the first letter or number. The most appropriate measurement procedure is what? Now remember, when we're choosing a measurement, we're trying to choose a measurement that's going to help us achieve our goal. And in this case, what are we trying to achieve? Well, the teacher wants to decrease the amount of time the student takes to begin working after being given a worksheet. So let's start there, the amount of time. With measurement, we're typically going to measure one of two things. We're going to measure time or we're going to measure a count. So when we have time, immediately we should start thinking duration, latency, into response time. Now in this case, the teacher wants to measure the time from when the worksheet is handed to the student to when the student begins the response. So what type of measurement do we use to measure between the SD and the first response? A, frequency recording. Frequency recording is going to measure a count or how many. We want to measure time, so frequency is out. B, latency recording. Latency recording measures what? Latency recording measures the time from the presentation of the SD to the start of the first response. So in this case, the presentation of the worksheet to the first time the student writes anything. This looks like a great or appropriate measurement to use given our goal. Now let's look at C because we read all of our answer choices. Rate recording. What is rate? Rate is just frequency over time. So since we've ruled out frequency, we have to eliminate rate as well. And then D, interval recording. Two things about interval recording. One, it's discontinuous, and we're not using discontinuous measurement here. Two, we need to break up the time into smaller sections of time to use interval recording, and we're not doing that here either. So the most appropriate measurement procedure based on this information is going to be latency recording. A non-vocal client consistently pulls an adult's hand toward the fridge when thirsty. A communication board with symbols is introduced and you begin teaching the client to point to juice to access a drink. Each time the client selects the correct icon, they are immediately given juice. Over time, pulling behavior decreases. What is the primary goal of this procedure? Now let's talk about primary goal. When we talk about the primary goal, it's the primary reason we're trying to use an intervention, or what are we trying to accomplish? Here we have a non-vocal client who's pulling an adult towards the fridge when thirsty. They introduce a communication board to teach the client to point to juice to access a drink. So just in the first two sentences alone, we have a lot of information about communication. Client's non-vocal. Currently, they pull an adult hand to communicate. Communication board is added. We want them to point to juice. So far, it's pretty clear we're trying to increase communication or change communication. So continuing, each time the client selects the icon, they are given juice, so they're reinforced for the right icon. And then at the end, it says polling behavior decreased. Now, polling behavior decreasing could be a benefit of the communication board, but is that our primary goal? Well, I wouldn't say so, since it doesn't specify if we're even targeting the polling behavior. For all we know, we're only targeting pointing to juice and have left the polling behavior alone. And just by chance, that behavior has decreased. So given this information, what's the primary goal here? A, teach the client functional communication. Yeah, I would say so. We've got a non-vocal client who is not using the correct way or the best way to communicate given their skills. And so we're going to teach them a different way to communicate. B, teach receptive language to the client. Receptive language is essentially following instructions, so we're not teaching that to the client in this case. C, reduce the problem behavior using extinction. So be careful here. The problem behavior did decrease. We just have no information on if we used punishment, extinction, or if it just went away itself. So C, we just can't justify. D, shape client behavior through multiple examples. Whenever we talk about shaping, we're looking for approximations. We're not looking at approximations here. We're looking at the single response. If that response occurs, we provide reinforcement. So the primary goal here is to teach the client functional communication. During a team meeting, a behavior analyst reviews the definition of non-compliance for data collection purposes. One staff member suggests defining it as when the client is being uncooperative or acting out. The analyst rejects this and instead defines non-compliance as the client does not begin the requested task within 10 seconds of the instruction in the absence of another assigned activity. Why is this definition more appropriate? So it's a wordy, kind of a longer question, but it's pretty straightforward because it's asking about the operational definition. When we are operationally defining a behavior, what are we trying to accomplish? One, we want to be objective, meaning we want to be factual. Two, we want to try to be as complete as possible. And three, what are we measuring? Now, if we look at the first definition of noncompliance, when the client is being uncooperative or acting out, a couple issues. What are we measuring? How do we justify uncooperative or acting out? Because to me, that may be something different than to you. It's just not very specific. It's kind of subjective. If we look at the analyst, the client does not begin the requested task within 10 seconds of the instruction in the absence of another assigned activity. So it's complete. We're measuring something, and it's pretty easy to identify. So why would that second definition be more appropriate? A, it allows for reinforcement to be delivered more consistently. Now, ideally, a good definition will allow for that, but there's no guarantee. So A is not a bad answer, but do we have a better answer? B, it includes a measurable time frame and describes the behavior in observable terms. Yes, it's much more measurable. We have this within 10 seconds, and it describes the behavior in much more observable and objective terms than just uncooperative or acting out. C, it ensures that noncompliance is recorded only when the client engages in problem behavior. Well, it can't ensure that. That's going to depend on the technicians and the team. The definition, the better the definition, typically more likely that the better the measurement is, but we can't guarantee that. And then D, it avoids labeling the client negatively, which ensures social validity. This definition is not necessarily about avoiding dignity or avoiding client negativity. With the definition, we're just trying to be as precise and complete as possible. So why is this definition more appropriate? It includes a measurable time frame and describes the behavior in observable terms. A student is learning to tie their shoes. The instructor is using a least to most prompting hierarchy. After the student independently completes the first few steps, they pause. The instructor first provides a general verbal cue. What do you do next with the laces? When the student remains unsure, the instructor then demonstrates the next step. This demonstration is a what? Okay, if we attack the question, this question is quite simple. First, we're looking at the demonstration. When we think about a demonstration, what are we thinking about? We should be thinking about a model. When we model something, we are demonstrating it. So if we have a student learning to tie their shoes, we're using a least to most prompting hierarchy, so we know it's a prompting question. The student does the first steps, and then the instructor gives a verbal cue, so that verbal prompt. When the student still doesn't respond, the instructor demonstrates the next step. So least to most, we've gone from verbal prompt to demonstration. What type of prompt is a demonstration? A, full physical, and B, partial physical. Well, the demonstration is not involving any physical cues or touch, so it's not going to be a physical prompt. What it's going to be is C, a model prompt. When we demonstrate, we are modeling, meaning we are doing the behavior we want to see, and hopefully the person imitates. D, gestural prompt. A gestural prompt is a motor movement, pointing or nodding or signaling what we want to happen, not necessarily a demonstration. Gestural is not a model because the gesture is not demonstrating it. It's just indicating what we want to see. When we actually demonstrate it, we are engaging in a model prompt. The client engages in frequent head hitting during transitions between activities. The behavior support plan includes a functional analysis with 4 conditions: attention, escape, alone, and control or play. During the escape condition, head hitting occurs at the highest rate. What does this suggest? So this is a harder question. I took a BCBA question and simplified it a little bit, but this is definitely one that you might need to think about a little more, right? But hopefully we can learn something from it. So first, what is a functional analysis? A functional analysis is kind of the highest level of assessment where we are manipulating antecedents and consequences to determine the function. And the way we do that is we evoke a behavior and then we provide the behavior with what it wants. So attention or escape, being alone. And if the behavior changes or happens more or less, we can make assumptions. So if the target behavior here is head hitting, and during escape, head hitting occurs at the highest rate, just using common sense, what do you think that would indicate? If we have all these different conditions, attention, escape, automatic, head hitting occurs at the highest rate during escape, when the behavior is getting what it wants, what do we think that suggests? A, the behavior is automatically maintained. Automatic would be much more closer to alone, right? Because automatic means it's not socially mediated. Escape is socially mediated. B, the client prefers the play condition and avoids the others. Well, that's not necessarily true since the behavior is happening in the escape condition. C, the behavior is likely escape maintained. Sure, the behavior is happening to escape. Escape is allowed. Behavior continues to happen. Whatever condition that behavior happens the most, we often will say in a functional analysis that is the function. And then D, the behavior is attention seeking. Well, it's happening most in escape. So we're going to point at escape over the other functions. What does this suggest? The behavior is likely escape maintained. Again, maybe a higher level question than what you're used to, but hopefully we can learn something from it. All right, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. We really appreciate it. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.